between waking and sleeping. I've always been a light sleeper, the kind who wakes up at the slightest noise. But lately, it's been different. For the past few nights, I've been waking up to something far more unsettling. My mother standing in the doorway of my room, just staring at me. The first time it happened, I chalked it up to a bad dream. I'd been stressed about school, struggling with insomnia, so maybe my brain was playing tricks on me. I remember the way my heart pounded as I opened my eyes and saw her silhouette in the dim light of the hallway. She didn't say a word, didn't move, just stood there, watching. I tried to call out to her, but my voice caught in my throat, strangled by some instinctive fear. Then I blinked, and she was gone. The next morning, I confronted her at breakfast. "Mum, were you in my room last night?" She looked up from her coffee, her face calm, expressionless. "What are you talking about, honey?" "You were standing in my doorway. I saw you." She frowned slightly, a crease forming between her brows. "I don't remember that," she said, her voice distant. "You must have been dreaming." It felt real, too real. But I let it go, convinced myself that it had to be a dream. But then it happened again, and again. Each night I would wake to find her standing there, sometimes in the doorway, sometimes closer. The worst was the night I opened my eyes and found her right beside my bed, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, as if she were trying to see something hidden deep within me. This time, I screamed. She didn't flinch, didn't move. It was as if she hadn't heard me. But then, just as suddenly, she turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps soft and deliberate. I couldn't shake the image of her eyes. They weren't right. Too dark, too empty, like the eyes of a doll. By day, she was perfectly normal, or so it seemed. She went about her routine, cooking, cleaning, asking me how my day was. But there was something off, a subtle shift in the way she moved, the way she spoke. It was like she was just going through the motions, like she was playing a role she didn't fully understand. And then there were the whispers. At first, I thought they were part of my nightmares, faint murmurs that drifted in and out of the edge of my consciousness. But then I started hearing them when I was awake. They came from down the hall, from behind closed doors, always just out of reach, like a distant conversation carried on the wind. I tried to ignore them, tried to convince myself that I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The house felt different, colder, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. One night, after another disturbing encounter with her, I decided to stay awake. I waited until the house was silent, the only sound the ticking of the clock in the living room. I sat up in bed, eyes fixed on the doorway, listening for the slightest sound. Hours passed, and just when I thought I might actually get some sleep, I heard it. A faint creak, the sound of a footstep. My heart raced as I strained to listen. The footsteps were coming closer, slow and deliberate. I held my breath, my eyes glued to the darkness beyond the doorway. Then she appeared, her figure framed by the faint light from the hallway. "Mom!" I whispered, my voice trembling. She didn't respond, didn't even blink. She just stood there, her head slightly tilted, as if she were trying to understand something that eluded her. "Mom, what are you doing?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but fear crept in, making it waver. She took a step closer, her bare feet silent on the carpet. There was something wrong with the way she moved, too fluid, too smooth, like she was gliding rather than walking. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. My mother couldn't be, whatever this was. But the closer she got, the more I realized that something was terribly, terribly wrong. "Stop!" I shouted, scrambling back against the headboard. She froze, her head cocked to one side, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. Then, slowly, her mouth began to move, forming words I couldn't understand. It wasn't English, or any language I'd ever heard. The sound was low, guttural, like a chant, or a prayer. I wanted to run, to scream for help, but I was paralyzed, trapped in my own bed. The words grew louder, filling the room, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would stop, praying I would wake up and find this was all just another nightmare. When I opened my eyes, she was gone. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen, humming to herself as she made breakfast. She looked up as I entered, smiling like nothing had happened. But I could see it in her eyes. Something was different. "Did you sleep well, honey?" she asked, her voice too cheerful, too bright. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I couldn't bring myself to confront her, not again. I was too afraid of what I might find out. Instead, I decided to do some digging. I needed to know what was happening to her, what was happening to me. I started searching online, looking for anything that could explain the strange behavior, the whispers, the foreign words. I found nothing that made sense. Sleepwalking, night terrors, even possession. I considered everything, but nothing fit. Then I stumbled upon something, a forum buried deep within a paranormal website. People were discussing similar experiences. Loved ones who suddenly changed, who began acting strangely, speaking in unfamiliar tongues, standing over their beds at night. They called them inhabitants, beings that weren't quite human, who took over the bodies of people they were close to, slowly erasing who they once were. The more I read, the more it made sense. The descriptions matched everything I was experiencing. These beings fed on fear, on the confusion and terror of their victims, until there was nothing left of the person they once were. I felt sick, the room spinning around me. Was my mother still in there somewhere? Or had she already been consumed by this thing that wore her face? I knew I had to do something. But what? How do you fight something like this? The forum was filled with stories, but none of them had happy endings. The inhabitants always won, leaving behind nothing but empty shells. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room, every light in the house turned on, waiting. I wasn't going to let her, or it, catch me off guard again. Around midnight, I heard the whispers. They started softly, almost imperceptibly, but grew louder, more insistent. The words were the same as before, that strange, guttural language that made my skin crawl. I stood up, my legs shaking, and moved towards the hallway. The whispers grew louder as I approached my mother's bedroom. The door was ajar, the light from the hallway casting a long shadow across the floor. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding in my chest. She was standing by the window, her back to me, her body swaying slightly as she muttered the words over and over. "Mom!" My voice was barely a whisper, but she stopped, the whispers ceasing abruptly. She turned slowly to face me, her eyes dark, almost black, her expression blank. "Mom, please," I begged, taking a step back. "Come back." For a moment, there was nothing, just silence. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't her smile. It was something cold, something cruel. "She's gone," the voice said, but it wasn't her voice. It was deeper, rougher, like sandpaper on stone. She's gone, and soon, so will you. I stumbled back, my mind racing. I had to get out, had to leave this house before it was too late. But as I turned to run, she moved, faster than any human should be able to, and blocked the doorway, her eyes gleaming with something inhuman. "You can't leave," she hissed, the words barely recognizable. "You belong to us now." I pushed past her, feeling her cold fingers brush against my skin, and ran down the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't stop until I was outside, the cool night air hitting me like a shock. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys, glancing back at the house. She, or it, stood in the doorway, watching me, that twisted smile still on her face. I got in the car and drove, not knowing where I was going, just needing to get away. But as I drove, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if it wasn't just her? What if there were more of them, waiting, watching? I don't know where I am now, just somewhere far from home, far from her. But I can't stop hearing those whispers, those terrible, inhuman whispers echoing in my mind. And I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there, looking for me, or worse, that she's already found me.